Welcome, everybody. Mr. Schultz here, and we're going to be talking about diving into Module 8, specifically the first part of 8.1 random sampling. Make sure that you write your name, your first name, and your last name at the top of your page. I want to know who you are, okay? I don't want to mix things up. Also, you're going to want to make sure that you put your period number right there. So let's go on. So let's go into some vocabulary, okay? So, perimeter is a measure that describes a characteristic of a population. So, for example, we could have certain parts of a population, like a specific population. So, for example, if we're talking about who should decide what our new mascot is, we could say, hey, high school students. We have a characteristic of people who, or students who go to Savannah High School. Next up, statistic. This is a measure that describes a characteristic of a sample. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, my motto is become the statistic that you wish to be, because you can't break away from being a statistic. So if you want to be the statistic that, becomes an astronaut, well, do the things to become an astronaut. Don't be the statistic where you're just going to lay on the couch all day, every day. That statistic isn't so good. So a population. This is all the members of a group of interest about which data will be collected. So, for example, we're talking about the population being, the high school students at a particular high school. So, finally, we have bias. A bias is when we have an error that results in a misrepresentation of a population. Now, we don't want to have errors. And for the most part, if we're trying to be true, then we're going to make sure we're going to eliminate most biases in our data. Now, we do that by making sure that we have random, simple random, as well as other types of data collection techniques. So, for example, if we go to the cat club on campus and we ask them, hey, what animal should we choose for our mascot? Probably they'll tell us cats. But that might be misrepresentation of our entire population. All right, next up. So we're going to talk about the different samples of population we could have. So the description. Each member has an equal chance of being selected. This is the simple and random right here. You want to make sure it's random because if it's clustered up and you ask like a certain number of students, for example, you go specifically to the cat club, they're not going to represent the broad general consensus of your population. You want to make sure your sample is big enough. Members are selected according to a specified interval. So if you're going to be asking people, coming into school, you don't want to ask people who are together because it might be that people who are together would think about the same thing. So, for example, you have the cat club people walking onto campus. If you ask the first 10 people walking together and it's the cat club, well, congratulations. Our school has a new mascot of cats, but that's not what we want. Now, this is called a systematic. So let's type it in. The next one we have is really puts a bias in our data collection. So we don't want to have this one. This one is when members volunteer to be included in the sample. This is self-selected. Most of the time you see this when they give those surveys. They give you surveys at a fast food restaurant, you fill it out, you turn it in. Most of the time, nobody fills those out except if you had a bad time. So for the most part, the surveys you're getting, or the surveys they get, is just saying, hey, look, we all have bad times, and it's like very negative. So you gotta watch out with that. Now, it might be like somebody's like really gung ho, and you have a group of people, but that's not what the whole population wants. And so it's going to skew the data a little bit. Now, you don't want to make, I mean, it might be easy for you, but like a good example of this next one, which is convenience, is when like you're talking, like it's convenient for you. So let's say you have a zero period and you just, ask all the students who come to zero period, hey, what should our mascot be? Well, not every student has a zero period. It's like, hey, what if you ask all the football players what our mascot should be? Once again, not every student is a football player. It might be convenient for you, but it's going to create some errors in our population, also known as a bias. So members are selected from similar non-overlapping groups. Now this one's okay. You could have data. You can make sure that you're getting data from equal proportions of a school. So for example, hey, make sure you ask maybe you want about like 10% of the population. So let's say, hey, you ask 50 to 100 freshmen, 50 to 100 sophomores, 50 to 100 juniors and seniors. I mean, you have to make sure, like, hey, if you randomly select people, there's a chance that you ask all seniors. So it's good if you make sure, stratify the data a little bit. Next up, going on in 3, 2, 1. So your first task is I want you to try to give an example of each one of these. So simple random, systematic, self-selected, convenience, and stratified. Try to use full sentences, okay? I believe in you, but we're going to go on in 3, 2, 1. All right, our first check for understanding. So the top one, there's going to be a wide range of different answers. But this next one, there's going to be one answer, and we're going to get to it. So now, please pause your videos, pause your videos, pause your videos, and pause your videos, because we're going to go over the answers. Membership. A club member would like to ask the other members in her state's council about new requirements for first-year members. Classify each sampling method. One last time, pause your video, and we're going to put the answers in just 1 second. So if she asks every 5th member of the council roster, this is going to be systemic or systematic. Matic. There we go. There's a variance, a specific number as she asks. If she asks every other club member in her 25-member club, well, that's convenience. And that's going to give us some bias. So if she splits the council into 4 age groups and randomly asks 20 people from each group, this is going to be stratified. Let's go on. So we have to make sure that we're identifying biases. So once again, self-selected, we're going to have the idea of, hey, sometimes that, the people are going to be asking too many, or they're going to be putting forward something that's not with the whole population. So I'm going to type something now. So self-selection overrepresents individuals with strong opinions. A non-response. So for example, if we make it hard for the individuals, there's going to be low turnout rate, which will skew our data. So you might ask certain people, but then if you ask them and they don't turn it back in, then it becomes a self-selection rate right here. So next up, undercoverage. So undercoverage could be like they ask, people with landlines who they're going to vote for. Well, who has a landline anymore? So if they ask a certain population, if they ask people on Facebook, if they ask people on MySpace, like there's going to be certain people in a certain group who only go to that site. It's not representative of the whole population. So that's just an idea. Like, under coverage, certain populations aren't going to be talked about. So the survivorship. So if they ask, ask a millionaire how he made his money. If you ask a millionaire how he's made money, he's going to be like, I put in the work, I made my money. Well, same thing with if you ask, people who won the lottery, how'd you make your money? Well, I bought the ticket and I won it. Like, there's this idea of I survived because I was, important, or I survived because I had something, I can't name it, but I had something that made me strong. Now, another bias, the final bias we're going to talk about is, hey, if we ask 10 people in the school what our mascot should be, that's not going to be good enough because it is not an adequate number to represent the whole. Too small of data will not give accurate results. So if we have a small set that we ask, it might be good, but for the most part, it won't be good because it will not cover all the positions that we might have. Last one, bias questions. Sometimes the surveys we have make people answer questions in a certain way. So, for example, would you rather have a dull salad or a delicious steak? Even saying it in a certain way might convince some people to answer in a certain way. All right, guys, this one ran long. I'm sorry. But you guys have a wonderful day.